Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley at sprinkledwithglitter.com. Thanks for joining me today. Today I'm sharing a card that features the Boughs and Holly bundle. This is a part of the September 2022 release from Concord 9th. It is their holiday release, and I've been sharing projects all month long featuring this fabulous release, and I hope you've enjoyed seeing the mini projects that I've created with all these fabulous products. Today I'm featuring the Boughs and Holly bundle, which includes the Boughs and Holly stencil pack. And there are two sets of 3 stencils in here. One of them creates an evergreen background and one of them creates a wreath. And I'll be using the wreath pack today. But here is a look at the finished designs when you layer up each one of these stencil sets to create a full image. And I'm going to show you how to use those today because there's a little trick that you might need to know. I'll also be using the Boughs and Holly stamp set as well as the coordinating die set. So I'm actually going to do all of my stenciling in my Misty stamping tool today. And this is kind of a fun trick to use with stencils if you haven't used it before. You can take your paper and place it in the lower right hand or lower left hand corner, just as long as it's always in the same corner. And then you can place your stencil in that same corner as well and hold it in place with your Misty magnet. Now, each one of these stencils are labeled. So this is the number 1 stencil in the wreath stencil set here. And I'm using some sea glass ink to blend over the entire wreath. Then I'm going to come in with a smaller blending brush and the Clover ink. And I think actually in my finished example that's in the photos, I used evergreen ink for this. So both of them work really nicely. You can kind of compare the difference there at the final thing. Now, once I've inked over this number 1 stencil completely, I have my shading added with that mini blending brush. I'm going to wipe down my stencil and I'm going to take this and rotate it 180 degrees. So the part that's at the top is going to go to the bottom. And I'm going to place it once again into the corner of my Misty stamping tool and hold it in place with a magnet. And then I'm using the same colors again, sea glass and Clover ink. Now I'm really focusing on adding a little bit of shading and depth and dimension to these leaves by making some parts darker, and I'm going in at the base with that mini ink blending brush and kind of adding that second color of green. The other way that you can really add dimension to this is to use a totally different color of green when you rotate your stencils. And that's really why these stencils were designed with that rotation in mind. It kind of mimics the idea of their Turnabout stamps from Concord 9th, and I really love that. Now, stencil 2, I started out with Ballet slipper ink, and once I did my rotation, I'm coming in with Grapefruit ink. So it's going to give me a little bit of variation in color. And then finally, I'm going to move on to stencil 3 and use Concord 9th wheat ink to add the branches. Now, this third stencil is the only one that you do not have to rotate. But look at that gorgeous finished image that I have there. And by adding that depth and shading with the smaller blending brush to just the base of those leaves, it really makes everything kind of come alive. Now, another way that you could do this would be to actually go in with some colored pencils afterwards if you wanted to add some details there and some shading, or maybe even a Copic marker. So there's a few ways that you can really add shading to these stenciled images, but I find that that mini ink blending brush and a little bit darker shade of a green ink really makes an impact, and it's very quick to do. So now I'm moving on to the sentiment portion of my card, and I'm going to heat emboss onto some vellum. So I have my vellum in my Misty stamping tool. I've prepped the surface with my powder tool, and you're going to see that I've actually masked off the lower portion of the sentiment with some Post-it tape so that I'm just inking up the word Mary and stamping that onto my vellum. I'm going to be die cutting this with the label dies in the Boughs and Holly die set, and I'm going to be die cutting each of these words individually and placing them kind of popped up on the card. So now I'm going in, I'm wiping down my stamp, I have my vellum rotated, and this time I've masked off the upper portion of this sentiment to where I am just inking up the word bright. And just keep in mind, if you're doing this, you want to remove that masking tape or paper, whatever you're using to mask off the lower portion before you stamp this onto your vellum, or you're going to transfer all the ink that masking paper caught onto your project. So I've gone ahead and added some silver embossing powder, and now I'm heat setting that. Yes, I know silver, it is so unlike me, but every now and then I just feel like a card needs silver, and this was one of those cards. So now I have this little label die from the Boughs and Holly die set. I'm holding it in place with a little bit of see-through transparent tape. This is actually a highlighter tape that I purchased on Amazon. I'll have that linked below. And I'm going to run that through my Gemini Junior to die cut that out. And you can see I have the word Mary on that adorable little label. And then I went ahead and rotated it and die cut the word bright as well. Now I am going to stamp the ampersand from this greeting in the center of my wreath. So I have my sentiment. Once again, I'm lining it up in my Misty stamping tool so that that will land right in the middle of my wreath. And now I'm going to mask off both the word Mary and the word bright, but I'm going to leave the ampersand exposed so that I can stamp that into the center of my wreath. So I prepped my wreath using my powder tool. And now that it's all masked off, I'm going to ink up the ampersand, remove the masking paper from that sentiment, and then stamp it right in the center of my wreath. Now I'm going to pull this out of my Misty stamping tool, and once again, I am using the sterling embossing powder from Brutus Monroe. And this is going to leave me with just that ampersand in the middle of my wreath. I'm heat setting that. And now this is ready to be trimmed down. Now I decided to make this a mini slimline card. I think it's such a fun card size, and my finished card will measure 3 1/4 by 6 1/4 inches. So I'm going to trim down this wreath panel to about 3 inches by 6 inches. And I'm just kind of centering it up in the center of those. I kind of took off a little at a time on each side until I got it the dimension that I want. And now I am using this pattern paper pack, which is also new from Concord 9th this month. And I am trimming just a tiny strip of this striped pattern paper. It is so adorable. And right up next to that, I am going to use a piece of the silver cardstock from Concord 9th as well. And I'm just layering those up onto my card front panel here. So now that I have my strips of cardstock in place over on the left-hand side, I'm going to go ahead and add my Vellum Sentiments. And I'm using some foam adhesive to add these onto the card front. Now, I have hidden the foam adhesive kind of behind the embossed lines, but I find that if you're adding foam adhesive behind vellum onto white cardstock, you really don't see it, so you don't have to mask it too much. Now that I have everything assembled, I'm going to go ahead and create my card base. So I am trimming this white cardstock to 6 1/2 by 6 1/4 inches. And along the 6 1/2 inch edge, I am going to score at 3 1/4 inches. So my final card measurements will measure 3 1/4 by 6 1/4 inches. This is perfect to hold like cash or a check or a gift card. It's just a fun and unexpected size card. So I'm layering this up with a piece of grapefruit cardstock right behind my card front panel. That's cut to 3 1/8 by 6 1/8. And then I added that entire card front onto my card base using some foam adhesive. And I'm going to finish off by adding some glossy accents to the berry to give them a little bit of shine and dimension. So that completes my card for today. I think this is a very simple card project that you could create over and over again for the holiday season. If you wanted to make it just slightly simpler, you could just heat emboss that sentiment directly into the center of the wreath. But I really love how bringing in a second color of ink blending kind of to add some shading to these stenciled areas brings this wreath to life. I think it is so beautiful, and I love the soft colors of this card project. Now, as always, I will have links to the featured products used in this project in the description at YouTube. So if you're looking for something in particular, you can check there. Or you can head on over to my blog at sprinkledwithglitter.com. I'll have that linked below as well. Over there, you'll find more still shots, more information, and a complete list of supplies. As always, thanks so much for stopping by. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications here on my YouTube channel so you don't miss any of my paper crafting and card making video tutorials. I really appreciate you being here, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.